Hey guys, hello, 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 hello.
Yeah, no, I'm about to leave.
How are you? How are you? How are you? Let me do this. You see, we make a mistake with that. Then it's public. We are now online. Hello guys. This red flower looks like it's growing out of my head. Can you take it, the red one, on this camera? It looks like I am so beautiful. The flowers are growing out of my head. No. Just remove it. Just remove it. Now it's growing out of my head from that camera. Put it down. Thank you very much. Let's see. Remove that blue flower as well. As I move, it's going to grow out of my head as well. Thank you. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Hi guys, call your friends. Tell me where you're joining us from. I want to welcome you properly. Tell me where you're joining us from. I just want to see whether UCTC, University of Malawi in the house. Welcome. Good to see you. Good to see who else is there. Lebu Tabile, welcome. Monday, welcome. Good to see you. The Past 3 AM squad, welcome. Mamusa, welcome. Welcome. UP, University of Pretoria, I'm so happy that you are here because today I'm talking to the Vice Chancellor of the University of Pretoria, top class. University of Botswana is here, Paris, Peter University, joining us from Paris. C'est la vie, welcome. Welcome, UCT in the house. UNISA, I can see TUT, I can see UJ in the house. Now we are waiting for Stellenbosch and University of the Western Cape. Vetis are here. University of Namibia in the house. CPUT in the house. It's getting better. You more UCT, tell your people. We want the house to be full before we can start. We don't like it when people come in late. Come on. Wusu in the house. Welcome guys. UKZN. UKZN. Welcome. Bantasebase Wusu here in the house. I see Soaz in the house. Abantubaka Habib in the house. Soaz in London is in the house. Welcome. UFS is in the house. Northwest University Potchefstroom campus. They are in the house. Welcome. Tell your people we are here. We can see UWC. We can see UKZN. And Facebook is quiet. You know, the Facebookers are so quiet. I keep wondering, should I close that shop on Facebook and they can just come to Insta and Twitter or not? All right, let's see. Wusu, UP, welcome, Mr. Zwani. So what are we doing today? Today we're talking about criteria for promotion to professorship. Remember that this is the last session of the third series. The third series was becoming a professor. We talked about what kind of professorships are there, who can become professor, how do you work towards it, how do the different types differ. We helped you understand how you get published, the scams, everything that's in there. And now what I want us to do is to consider different criteria, because as you know, I said to you, different universities have different criteria for promotion. It is not for the government to decide what criteria is used across all universities. Every university decides what criteria they want to use for promotion. And today I'm going to be talking to two executives, Professor Pinky Sekwe and Professor Tawana Kupe. Professor Tawana Kupe is the Vice Chancellor of the University of Pretoria, and Professor Pinky Sekwe is a Deputy Vice Chancellor at Sefako University. I'm going to start with Professor Pinky Sekwe, and I'm going to talk to her about her experience, her rise into professorship, and also what they consider at the University of Sefako University to professorship. I can see people from Regent Business School, welcome. And then Professor Pinky Sekwe will break it down. Now, here's the reason why I invited Professor Pinky Sekwe, who's a DVC, as well as a Vice Chancellor who I really respect, Professor Tawana Kupe, to come and talk about this. Is because we, the people in management, heads of departments, deans, deputy vice chancellors, and vice chancellors, we make decisions about who qualifies to become a professor and who doesn't. We say yes to some people and we say no to some people. And often, when people get a no, people get very aggrieved. And sometimes people compare themselves with another university and say, but why wasn't I promoted? Why was this person promoted? And I just want us to understand the criteria that's used and the conversations that takes place. This is not about criticizing individuals or not. This is not about criticizing universities. It's about helping you who wants to be an academic understand what will take you there. It is not saying the process is not complex. The process is complex. Obviously, there will be some subjectivities, whatever university you go to, because it is done by human beings, and it's not a perfect science. Let's just be clear, it's not a perfect science, but a lot of thinking, a lot of thought goes into this, and that's why I want us to talk about it. So I can see Professor Pinky Sekwe is online. I'm going to talk first to Professor Pinky Sekwe, and then I will talk to Professor Tawana Kupe, who's a Vice Chancellor who has worked at Vet University and at Rhodes, and now he's running UP, and I will go to him afterwards. But I start with Professor Pinky Sekwe, and she is joining us right now on the line. Questions you can put on. I have received only one question, the one that focuses on whether NRF ratings used, and I will talk to that at some stage during the session. And I will also, before the session ends today, I will tell you about what I plan to do during the month of December, so that you know how to benefit from these. I'm planning to continue making them worthwhile throughout the December, but lighter and more manageable. So be with us in this period. Welcome. So good to have you with us. I can see today we even have people from New York City joining us. Dr. Kensa is joining us from New York City. Thank you so much for joining us. It's beautiful. We have people from Namibia, Malawi, Cyprus, Dublin. People are joining us here. Pinky, so this is high stakes. Welcome. Good to have you. Thank you so much for joining me. Pinky, do you want to say hello?
Hello, Katie. Hello.
Good. Pinky, you know, this is a live show. You know, I always say teaching is an art. Those of us who are teaching know that it is not only what you say that matters, it's how you say it. Otherwise, the whole class goes to sleep. Now, it is the same online, because online it's worse. They can't even smell my perfume. And so all they're depending on is my energy as it comes through the screen. I'm going to ask you to work with me here. We're not going to be boring here. We're not going to be boring. We're going to get on to this. We're going to do this thing. So work with me, Pinky. Now, Pinky, you are a professor. Can you tell us what is your discipline?
My discipline is nursing. I'm a professor of nursing.
All right, Pinky, professor of nursing, yeah?
Yeah, I'm in the field of health.
In the health sciences. Of nursing. Yes. Fantastic. Yes. And you became a professor. Where were you teaching? Which university were you in when you became a professor?
By the time I was becoming a professor, I was at the University of Fort Hare.
All right.
In my professorship, I specialize in leadership, strengthening health system through mentoring and leadership.
All right. So you focus on leadership in your research.
Yes.
All right. And do you know what they considered when they promoted you to professorship?
Yes. When they promoted me to professorship, they considered the fact that I was ready. I showed interest. I told them that I'm ready to be promoted, and I studied the promotion criteria of the university. And okay. I also didn't start at the time when I was requesting to be considered. Immediately after I was promoted to associate professorship, I knew that I needed to prepare myself to the next level. And I looked at the criteria for being a full professor, and I started working towards the criteria and preparing my portfolio. Yes, I prepared a portfolio of evidence to show that when I write and I request, I have my portfolio which shows that these things have been achieved. For an example, my performance in teaching and learning, because the criteria it was based on 4 areas, and even where I am, it's still based on 4 areas: the area of teaching and learning, the area of research, throughput rate, the area of community engagement and service, university service.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So what you are saying to young people out there is that when they join academia and they're doing their work, even before they think of applying for promotion, they should look at the promotion criteria just to see what your university is looking for promotion, because it is not the same. Just look at what your university is looking for. Now, you were at Fort Hare when you became a professor. Some universities count the number of publications. Some universities look at the impact of your research. Some universities just want to know that you are doing research. They don't care whether there's impact and how many. How does Fort Hare do that? Or at that time when you were there?
Yeah, Fort Hare is not counting the numbers. Like for an example, where I am at Spakomagatu, they count the number of publication. Fort Hare look for a reasonable amount for you to become a full professor. They look at your teaching, evidence of teaching, the scholarship of teaching, and your ability to develop academic programs, your ability to teach, your evaluation. Because when you teach, there must be evidence that the people that you are teaching are receiving what you are giving them well, and you have to be evaluated. So they look at those, and also they want to make sure that you have attended a postgraduate over and above your professorship. You must have a postgraduate diploma or a qualification in teaching, or a certificate in assessment and moderation, so that your teaching can be evaluated.
Is that Spakomagatu or is that Fort Hare?
At Fort Hare.
Okay,
at Spakomagatu, they don't consider the postgraduate qualification, but they also consider the same requirements. Are you leading in your teaching? Have you developed any academic program? Are your students enjoying your teaching? Are they evaluating you? Are you known locally and internationally by your peers?
Yeah. So here's the thing, guys. Usually we say the universities consider three things: your teaching, your research, and your community engagement, or what we call in other universities social responsiveness. Now, what Professor Pinky Seko is telling us is that in one of the universities that she worked in, Fort Hare, they also needed to know that you have done a postgraduate diploma in teaching, all right? Because they wanted to make sure they have people, academics in their university who can teach, all right? Either that you've done that postgraduate diploma in teaching or assessment or something about higher education, teaching and engagement. So that's an interesting thing because it's different. It's normally not a requirement. The other thing that Professor Pinky Seko is telling us is that it may be good to have a portfolio, like start building your portfolio before you apply for a promotion. And one of the things that you want to show in your portfolio is that you are a brilliant teacher. Being a brilliant teacher is not about the postgraduate certificate, right? It's about the reviews that you are getting from your students. And that's what Professor Seko is talking about, right? That how will people know how good a teacher you are? Is that if you do a survey, perhaps at the end of the semester, that students give you feedback, or perhaps you invite a colleague in your lecture who will sit with you the whole month or whatever number of lectures, and they can write a report about your teaching. You can have two colleagues who come into your class because you want evidence that you are a good teacher. So think about it. Oftentimes we think it's only publications. Some universities are interested in teaching, and so they will consider that seriously, okay? So that's an important thing because it says this university didn't consider the number of publications, but they considered the teaching. They needed to know that you are a teacher who's qualified, all right? Pinky, what else did they okay, let me answer first the questions that people are asking. So I'll answer them quickly. Ginger Stone is asking, why don't we have standardized criteria for all universities? Ginger Stone, here's the thing. Universities are autonomous. The government doesn't tell us what to teach, how to teach, and who to teach, whatever. We decide. And so they cannot tell us also how to promote and so on and so forth. Universities also have different focus areas or foci. So they decide teaching is key for us. So when we promote, we're going to show that we're going to foreground teaching this way, or research is more important for us. And for us, what counts as research excellence is this, and therefore we're going to put it in our performance criteria. Different universities have different views about this, and it is very important that we protect the autonomy of universities so that every university can make its own decisions in this way. That's what will make us competitive as a country globally. There's another question where someone says, do you carry your professorship to other universities? No, you don't. You don't carry your professorships to other universities. So when I came from vets and I went to UNISA, they used their own criteria to say what level am I. When I moved from UNISA and CBC to come to UCT, they appointed me as a deputy vice chancellor, and then they took my credentials to the faculty for the faculty to decide what level am I. It does happen that you can come from one university as an associate professor or as a professor, you go to another university and that university says you don't even qualify to be a senior lecturer because they are using their own criteria. So wake up, don't complain. Before you apply, look at the criteria, make sure that that's what you want to do. Pinky, let me hand over to you to talk to us more about other criteria besides teaching that you have seen in Makatu and also at Forte.
Yeah, and another criteria is research, is your research output. Look at how many students have you supervised for your master's and PhD. At the University of Forte, they don't count, even at Sfako Makatu, but they say you must have supervised PhD candidates. They look at the number of publications. I indicated previously that at Forte, they don't count the publications, but it should be a reasonable amount of papers that you have published in accredited journals. At Sfako Makatu, they want 10. And I think when I was promoted at Forte, it was far beyond that 10. And then they look at are you attracting funding as a full professor? Do you have a research where you have got your funding and you are leading and you are developing postgraduate students? And also in that center or in that research area of yours, is there any teaching that is coming out of the research that you are producing? And is it also translating to changing lives in the community? Remember that if research, in research, we contribute towards developing postgraduate students. In other words, we are contributing to the human resource for health or human resources under general, because when they complete, they must go and work. So they look at those things, and they also look at, are you known by your peers internationally and locally? Are you invited? Have you ever been overseas to go and speak? Except presenting papers, are you invited to just go and become a speaker? Maybe by peers or just, that's what they are looking at.
Okay, so that's important. I mean, it's interesting that some universities, as you say, tell you the number of publications. Some don't tell you the number, but they say it must be reasonable. And that's where the subjectivity comes in. So the committee sits and decides what's reasonable and what's not. The other important thing that you mentioned that differs in universities, in the universities that you have been in, they talk about accredited publications. And accredited publications, Banta, it is a list that is produced by the South African Department of Higher Education, right? And that's the list that earns universities subsidy when they publish in it, okay? So some universities don't necessarily focus on that list. They focus on the standing of the journal. Some journals might not be on there, or they focus on ISI and Scopus and what, the different listings that some of which might not be there. So what Professor Sekwe said earlier is very important. Some universities do this, do that. It is your business to look at the promotion criteria so that you are much better equipped. Before I come back to you, Pinky, I want to take this this question that I see someone is asking. We've dealt with it before, but I know it's a question that young people keep asking again and again. And he says, Shalongo says, how come we have people not in academia but referred to as prof? It's because we've got different kinds of profs. Shalongo, we have different kinds of professors. Some people are adjunct professors. Some people are professors of practice. Some people are honorary professors. They don't have to be in universities. They may be retired, or they may be working in corporates or in some international office or whatever. Every university has got a right to decide who becomes a professor and so on and so forth. Right? So number of years do not count as doctor. No. In universities, you can have 20 years with a PhD. If you do not produce the goods, which is research, teaching, community engagement, you might not be promoted and you might retire as a senior lecturer. And that is perfectly fine. You are a normal human being and we will celebrate you because you probably taught a lot and educated many people who have graduated. So don't stress. Another question says, okay, there's most universities look at teaching and learning, research in terms of publications and supervision and community engagement in line with university goals. Absolutely. University goals always count. People, you look at university goals. What other advice you want to give people, Pinky?
Yeah, I just want, also there's a criteria on community engagement that you have to contribute. In community engagement, there must be a project that you are leading that is linking to your teaching or to your research, but that is improving the lives of communities. And after above that, the university service, you must be in a position, because once you become you have your PhD, you become a senior lecturer, you become an associate. By the time you become professor, you must have provided leadership. We call it academic leadership. Leadership as a head of department, as a dean, or anything but it, you must have provided leadership. You must show that I brought funds, I recruited people, I developed, I mentored young people, because that is very important. And I brought partnerships for the university. I brought funding for the university. You know, you show how valuable you are to the university. You are not just a person who's going there to do your research, to get your money and to go home. You are a senior academic now at the university. You are contributing, you are running your research area, a center, and you might even be NRF rated by then. It also counts when you are being promoted.
Cool, great. So community engagement counts, but also leadership and service. In other universities, Banta said it's called academic citizenship. Right? So in some universities, we call it academic citizenship. Serving in committees, serving as head of department, and so on and so forth. So don't take them lightly and think that it's a waste of time. Yes. Contribute. Make sure that you participate. But having said that, it doesn't mean you spend all your time in committees and then when you come to be promoted, tell us you didn't do research because you were in committee. It won't work that way. So I saw some few questions. Someone is just throwing a joke. They say, why is Dr. Malinga called doctor? Come on, you guys, listen here. If you are pregnant now, when your child gets born, you can call them doctor. You can even call them professor. Nobody's going to stop you there. And they can then become a white king and they can just call themselves doctor or professor. That's fine. Everybody can do that, okay? You can even be funny and say it's Dr. Sekwe or Professor Sekwe or Professor Page. It doesn't matter. So, Dr. Malinga is going to run. Everyone going to tell them what they are. The point is they're not a doctor. Okay, so come on. All right. And then someone said, what kind of community engagements are considered? There isn't really, as far as I know, Pinky, there isn't a thing about you've got to do this kind of community engagement or that kind. It's really what's consistent with your work. Some people will go and work with schools, some people will work with NGOs, some people will volunteer, will do some work at orphanages or social development institutions. It really is depend on you. It depends on you. You've got to realize that if you want to be an academic, it is not a primary school, it is a university. So nobody's going to give you a list and say you must do the top 3 things, go to these top 3 schools, what. You decide. That's how universities work. You decide. Any more thoughts, Pinky? that you want
Yeah,
to
and
share?
also when you are at that level, the community is expecting you to plow back into the community. So
Yeah.
you find that your community engagement is linked to your teaching and learning, or it's linked to your research, or it's linked to both of them in the partnerships that you form with NGOs,
Yes.
with communities themselves, with government departments, where you are bringing partners, new stakeholders to the university.
Yes.
So it's a
Yes.
difference that you make, and also taking teaching and research, changing them to benefit the community, because we don't want universities to be towers that cannot be accessed by anyone. But through community
Yes.
engagement, we are going back and reaching out to the communities and inviting them back to the university so that university can be accessed.
Great, great. That's fantastic. So the universities in the community in the university, make yourself useful and relevant in the community where you are located as a university academic.
Yeah.
All right. Pinky, thank you so much. If there's anything else you want to share with us, I'll be delighted to have it. I'm going to be calling Professor Tawana Kupe soon, but I want to hear if there's any other words, parting words of advice that you want to give to us.
Yes, I want to give to people who are still preparing themselves for being professors that when you work as an academic, don't just work. You don't just go to work, teach, and go home. You prepare yourself. You prepare, you study the criteria, prepare for being promoted to any next level, and mentor young people as you are growing, and also find mentors for yourself. Because when you have mentors, they assist you, they help you to grow. And remember that mentoring helps you to grow and become a leader, while you are also taking others and helping them to become leaders within the academic environment.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Pinky. Thank you so much. We are going to talk to Professor Tawana Kupe, and I'm sure we're going to get even more ideas from Professor Tawana Kupe. Pinky, thank you so much, my sister, for coming on board, for the collaboration, for the sisterhood. Much appreciated. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Kheti, and thank you, listeners.
Alrighty.
Thank you. I enjoyed the session.
Welcome. So now we're going to the next segment. We're going to talk to Professor Tawana Kupe. Professor Tawana Kupe is the Vice Chancellor of the University of Pretoria, and I hope he's still in the room somewhere. Professor Tawana Kupe was my senior at Wits, and he served as as Dean of Humanities. He also served as a Deputy Vice Chancellor, and now he is Vice Chancellor at the University of Pretoria. Tawana, how are you?
I'm fine, Hiti. How are you?
And very well. You know, I was thinking, do you remember that when I got promotion at Wits to associate professor, you were in my selection committee?
Yes, I was. Promotions committee, yes, yeah.
You were in the promotions committee, and of course, it was a dramatic time. You know, the first one they said no. They said no, I can't be promoted. You know, I'm too young. I haven't been at the university long enough. And then I protested, and then I said I want to see this promotions committee.
Yeah.
To the promotions committee, yeah.
Yeah, I was an observer because I was becoming head of school. So it was a transition phase. So I actually had no speaking or voting rights then, but it was fascinating for me starting because now I was going to be putting up my own staff members for promotion. So,
yes.
Yeah.
It was a dramatic moment. I still have the notes that I had prepared on that day. I was so angry. I have to show them that I'm a professor, and I interpreted myself. I must tell them what is this thing.
Yeah. Remember also that's when you and I met actually before became friends because I'd been promoted. So you phoned me and said, can I talk to you about how it went for you? So you and I started an academic conversation and we learned a lot from each other.
I remember. No, you've been I was telling them you were my senior, of course. You've been very helpful. And I remember even Tokoma Yekiso, the DC of University of Mpumalanga, was in that promotions committee.
He was head of a school then,
He was school. Yes, he was head of school. Anyway, Tawana,
Yeah.
thank you very much for agreeing to talk to me. I want you and I are vice chancellors. You know, we've been DVCs. We've been together at VETS. You know, I took a detour to UNISA, and now I'm here. We are running universities. It's a very controversial thing. This thing of promotion. You know, it's very controversial because anyone who applies for promotion doesn't imagine being told no, you are not ready.
Yeah.
And of course, as important as it is not a perfect science.
No, it
And
isn't.
it is not a perfect science, and it's very difficult to tell people the bad news. It's only good when you tell people the good news. So your views about promotions, having had the journey that you've had.
Yeah, so I think, and Prof. Pinky, I think, gave us a very wonderful background, and also your comments that it differs from university to university. As you rightly said in my introduction, I was also at the promotions committee at Rhodes University, by the way. Then actually I represented the staff union. We had a seat at the promotions committee. So, so obviously promotion of my members was a big thing. But also I learned a lot. Then I went to BITS. Then I'm now at University of Pretoria. First, I think the thing that is important is the criteria, and also criteria between different disciplines. Often people don't understand that, because one of the controversies in universities, someone will say, so and so over there was promoted. What kind of promotion do they have in humanities or sciences or health sciences? This person would not be a professor in our faculty. Because in promotion committees, often also have people who from different disciplines, where there are different publication cultures. So one big one is the following. In humanities, to be a full professor and sometimes to be an associate professor, some universities might want to see a book you have published on your own, a single authored monograph, they call it. Whereas in the natural sciences, often journal publications carry much weight, and some natural sciences disciplines are not, don't publish in books. I mean, they publish actually in journals, and also co-authorship of in journal articles in science is important, collaborations. So in article, you can see, I've seen articles with 100 authors, being 3 pages, full of formulas. Whereas in humanity,
it's only particle physics, it's hydrogen physics
yes,
topologists don't do that. You know, so
exactly.
not all the sciences. And it's interesting the sciences because there's also different politics, because some disciplines within the sciences, a citation index counts more than in other disciplines, like in pure mathematics.
Yes, exactly.
But some physics it would count. You know, so within that it's very different. And even within one discipline in chemistry, whether you are physical chemistry or organic, there will be different cultures and whatever. So very different.
Yeah, no, exactly. And also then I think what Pinky said, and you reinforced, is people must know those differences when they are preparing themselves for promotion. And I think it's really very important for one to see it as a journey, the promotion thing. It's not an event. You actually work towards it, and you have to know the criteria upfront. And second, it's a balancing act. Because, you know, you don't want to show up at the promotions committee and they commend you for 3 of the 4 criteria. And they say in this criteria you are weak, and compared to candidates who came before the committee with the same, you are lacking in a sense. They will tell you you are going there. They use the term which has an unfortunate history. You are not yet ready. And I always say, I don't like that expression. I always say to people, what do you mean to a person when you say they are not yet ready? Be specific about what they need to do, because that's part of mentoring, that's part of growing scholars, and so on and so forth. And so I think that that if it's seen as a journey and it's seen as growing your scholarship, because one of the things I think that's important to agree, Hetty, is that, you know, a university might be your employer, but your scholarship and your knowledge, you own it. The university doesn't own that. So you must also be satisfied in your own right, comparing with your peers, that you feel you are actually, you met the criteria, you are ready, you are contributing at that level. Because nobody can give that to you if you like. Yes, you have to go through the processes of the institution, but the confidence in yourself is very, very important, because it's about your profile, it's about your standing, it's about, you know, when you meet your peers, they recognize you as one.
Absolutely. And that's a very important point. So people have to judge themselves within the field before you should know your standing within the field before you even apply. But you see, as individuals, we're very different, you know. So we sometimes I might overestimate myself because I presented a paper and 3 people said, "Oh, that was nice. That was very interesting." They didn't really say it was great. They are not even citing it, whatever. And I might have just inflated sense of myself. And
Yeah,
think,
yeah,
and then
yeah. None of
we are also in a time where there's everything fake. You know, I noticed that. I mean, Pinky talked about. You also have to be invited to conferences to be a keynote speaker. But just like there are fake journals and conferences that people get invited to be keynote speakers, but you don't know everyone has been invited to be a keynote speaker. And when you are a young academic, you can't discern. And then you write these things. People who are experienced in the field know this is a bogus conference that you're invited to be a keynote speaker in. You know, and people, but then people are invited because they think that's their best, but they're actually in a wrong space. So it's a very tricky thing right now. Even awards. I
yeah.
mean, you know, you get these letters that you've been elected to the top who's who in the world. You must pay $100. And then you see people have written these things in their CVs. You know, why they think they things because I'm in the top top who's who in the world. When you look, you know this is nonsense. The people who are running these schemes are making money out of ignorant people, charging them $100+,
Yeah.
giving them a certificate, and then people think that's stature, and it is not. Whereas someone who knows will say, "This is the name of the journal. This is prestigious. This is why. This is." Or you'll get some young academics saying, "You know, I want to get into nature. I know that pure math is not as easy thing to go into nature, but I want to get into nature, and this is how."
Yeah. Yeah.
And they have an agenda. They say, "Get into nature. I know this thing," and so on and so forth. So it seems to me that people need to be mentored properly.
Yeah, and I think also people must check with peers. You
Yes.
you can't suddenly get an award letter from some organization you have never heard of, and then it goes into your head, and you start adding it to your CV, putting it on your social media. You must ask colleagues. Colleagues,
Yeah.
have you heard about this? This is what I just received. Our sector academia works by peer collaborations, peer conversations, dialogues, and so on. Double checking will not take away your award if it is genuine, but not double checking will embarrass your reputation if it is not genuine. When the peers discover you've just been taken in by some scammers.
Absolutely. And then the other
Yeah.
controversial thing is the use of the NRF rating as a criteria. Some universities use the criteria. They say if you are rated this level, you cannot be a full professor. You've got to be. Your views about that?
Yeah, so my views are also incorporating what's been done at the 3 universities I've worked in, including University of Pretoria. It's not a requirement, but it's used as some of the evidence of your standing. So at University of Pretoria and both at BITS, the people never said you have this NRF rating, which is not yet the international recognition or the higher you go in the ratings. Therefore, we can't promote you. They looked at a range of evidence. So it was used as one piece of evidence to indicate your standing. So, for example, on the upper levels of the rankings, A's and B's, there are international peer reviews there. There's international standing that goes to a ranking. Unless, of course, you are lacking in other criteria. The university cannot simply ignore that. But also, it's dangerous to simply put it as a strict requirement in that it's a South African system of rating, right? If you now want to hire a guy from somewhere else, they will not have an NRF rating. You will have to use other criteria to actually judge that they are. So I think the best thing just in promotions, I always say to people I was mentoring or when I was a dean, deputy vice chancellor, I would say that you must actually gather all the evidence necessary to test a person's standing. And it will not be one. It won't be just an H index, citation index, because they carry different weights in different disciplines. So when I rewrote the criteria for promotion when I became the dean of both ex-faculty, I say that it's incumbent upon applicants and those who are supporting promotions to bring as much evidence as possible about a person's standing, because some of it might not be immediately obvious. And so when I went to VIS, for example, they didn't have my discipline, which is media studies. And so it was not taught. And so I studied the whole department and all of that and built it up until it offered PhDs. They didn't know what the criteria was, what the general standings were. And so this is to prevent also a narrow set of people who have always been in institutions determining who can be promoted here. Because there are new fields, even transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary fields. You won't find the evidence where you think you will. Yeah.
And then thanks, Tawana, I'm with you completely that it's one of the criteria. And if someone has got a C2 or a C1, doesn't mean they don't have international recognition.
No, it doesn't. Yes, yeah.
You have to look at other pieces of evidence. And then there's also the perception. I mean, you and I lead the so-called previously white universities. And as soon as I put this poster that I'm going to have this session, people immediately went, oh, it is racist, black people will never be promoted in this, and they were universities, so this university will never promote black people, what. And of course I didn't respond. And I have to say, in many spaces, promotions in academia, and it's precisely what you said, that it's a peer system. And in my previous I talked a lot about this, that it's a peer system, and someone said, oh, it's a brass cap. And I said, no, but if you say that, you make it sound like, you know, but it's an apprenticeship system. Even to rise up the ranks, you go up by apprenticeship, and that's just how the system works. And it seems to me that's the strength of the system, but it can also be a weakness, because especially when we come with our history, that we come from a segregated history, so the connections have been realized historically. You and I will know each other beyond just the fact that we are from birth, but also other things culturally that we share that we might not share with other people. And so it makes people seem racist. What would be your response to someone who says, but the promotion criteria at UP is racist, only white people will get promoted, and they don't know they want promotion? Nobody speaks for me in that community.
No, I think that you can never say there are no prejudices of any kind in a system given its history, right? But also, I think what has happened over the years is that promotion for criteria has become more and more transparent. And especially our links with international peers often means that it's not the local people only, racist or not, who make a judgment call. That is why promotion committees must always seek peer reviews beyond the national, especially if you are judging people, if you like, in our still somewhat segregated system, if you like. And once that has happened, actually, you've seen very many young people, including us. You and I were promoted when we were fairly young. It would not have happened if, like, it was racist, just mere racist gatekeeping. But and what might happen is procedural unfairness. That is why the appeals were important, and that is why you were able to demand an appeal and get it done. So more transparency, and also the system mustn't become like everyone is chasing promotion and everyone is blocking those who want to be promoted. We must say we need top level scholars at every level. What nurturing, mentoring, enabling systems do we have? One of the systems I think is improved to you and I know in the last few years. They weren't enabling systems. Support programs to create a new professorate, be deliberate about it, make sure those people who you want to promote are diverse in terms of gender, race, and age as well. Because we also have an aging professorate on the other hand that might actually be predominantly white. You want the next cohort to be diverse in both gender, race, academic fields, and disciplines.
Yeah. Someone has just asked a question here on Twitter about does having a postdoc give you an advantage? What's the advantage of rising up?
A postdoc, I think most postdocs, as you know, are largely research fellows. That's another way for. So what it does simply is that it builds up your publication profile. But remember, a postdoc does not normally include teaching. and other forms of academic citizenship. And my daughter wants to also hear what I'm saying, so you can listen. You'll be a professor one day. So a postdoc, yes, puts you on the track if you like. You still need to get that permanent position, because typically a postdoc is also a contract position until you get into what the Americans call the tenure track, or you get a permanent post. What it gives you advantage is that you have a dedicated period for publications. And when you get into that tenure track or permanent post, you have built up a profile on that leg, the research front. Yeah.
But of course, if you're a postdoc, you can also offer to tutor, like
exactly. Yeah.
Always like don't just think you just do the one thing, especially if you're succeeding. Offer to tutor and so on. Last week I spoke to a young person who is started as a postdoc and is now working, and gave a very good advice to young people about volunteering to teach and standing in for other people to build your portfolio. you have a young academic in your midst there.
Yeah, he's playing on the iPad.
So it's a good thing to offer to do that. And then the other thing that Pinky talked about was about a postgraduate qualification for teaching. Is it a requirement?
Yes. Yeah, no, it's interesting one that, and I think in that stakes you are better off than me, because you did teach before and even lead high schools. I remember you telling me, which I never did. I went the quote unquote classical route of academics. You go to your PhD, you can teach, go to class. So, but increasing years with many things and with research, in the old days, for example, postgraduate supervision and teaching were not that important. But the minute we went into this phase where we want to build research-intensive universities, the criteria became tighter, to be frank. But then also people then began to realize we are neglecting teaching and learning. And people have begun to say, simply because you have a PhD, you're a star researcher, does not mean that you are a good teacher. So a teaching qualification is necessary. But if you are to make it a strict criteria, you might actually, in essence, create a whole gatekeeping exercise that might become unfair. Increasingly, I think, yes, we should build it into it that teaching is as important as research. It has its own weighting in promotion, and you best do it if you have a professional. So it's an added advantage. Remember that in academia, we often have this notion of an added advantage. So yes, it's not a strict requirement, but if you have it, it if you like, depends your case for promotion. I think at this stage, that is what we should do. But for not making promotion, that today, of course, we are talking promotion, so this is our focus. Yeah, but outside just talking promotion and focused on research, we must begin to say, how do we build it and enable people to get the qualification and reach a point where we might say that, no, you need it. Just like in the past, remember that some of the guys that we have worked with, you and I, in the old days, they were promoted without PhDs. We could not be promoted without PhDs. You know that. It came a phase where you can't. It became, you must have a PhD. But of course, it's also field and discipline dependent. Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes, by the way, universities introduce the requirement for this diploma or certificate assessor program or teaching, because they have already made the rule that everyone must train as a teacher, not to solve the promotion problem, but to solve the quality of teaching problems in lecture.
Yes, exactly.
Because frankly, some of the worst teaching is at university. I studied education, and I believe that teaching is an art. It's not just about what you know. What you know different. And so then you woke up to this thing and said everyone must do this thing. So when they put it as a promotion, they are trying to force people to do this. Of course, the big question to ask is whether a postgraduate qualification makes you a better teacher. I'm not sure.
Okay, no.
What makes someone a better teacher is not because they studied education necessarily. It's a sort of So that's what makes it judging quality of teaching for promotion purposes at university very difficult. What is your recommendation? I mean, speaking to Pinky, Pinky said people should build their portfolio so in terms of teaching. And I remember that at VETS, I got someone from the Center for Learning and Teaching to come and sit in my class and write a report and so on. Are there other ways in which people can provide evidence of their teaching for promotion purposes?
Yeah. I mean, like, it's one of the contentious areas, as you know, and one is never really sure. Some people almost like game the system. They start building up nice teaching evaluations closer to promotion, whereas I think it should be a standard B outside promotion. Yes, and it should be triangulated. In my view, it should be student evaluations, but not they alone, and not because also, as you know, people who teach will tell you, if you ask for evaluations from students after many failed a test or an exam, there will be consequences. so that is why they should actually be spread over before and after a test, and then complemented by peer reviews. And then also, I personally like reflections of a person who's teaching. What do you feel about your teaching? And what do the peer and student evaluations say to you? Often that reflective dimension is better than being scored by others and so on. Because it goes back to my point that in academic career, you own yourself. You want to build it. You're not being corralled into it. Yes, you have to put it into a system that's going to judge you. But I think the best thing, when some of the teaching evaluations I've seen, which were reflective, somebody said, this course I taught very, very badly. And this is what I learned from it. And this is how I'm improving it. And this is how it is going on improved. I'll promote that person. Instead of somebody who comes saying, I'm a fantastic teacher. And yes, no. I mean, you have to be self-reflexive. We're not here in a game of, we're going to be jailed or anything. And the self-reflection that is self-critical, that person might actually be a better teacher and even a better researcher.
Absolutely. And then community engagement is also another tricky one to...
Yes, how do you measure it? How do you assess it? What counts? So at the University of Pretoria, I mean, I grappled with it at this, but I found something interesting at the University of Pretoria, that it must be anchored in your teaching and research. So because some community engagement can mean me collecting from all of my friends, including the clothes we don't want to wear, giving it to lots of orphanages and to people who are poor. It's because I know about poverty and all of that. The community engagement must be a translation of your teaching and your research into improving the community and doing sustainable things. Not things which if you stop doing, they won't happen again. I think that's the impact means changing, transforming lives, transforming communities, making contributions to sectors, to business, and to government. I think that's, for me, better engagement. And you can also say it's evidence-based and not just out of your heart stuff. That we must do. But it cannot, for purposes of promotion, because promotion is also saying this person is advancing scholarship, which is meaningful. Research, if you like, that matters. So, and the person reflecting also on their engagement and using knowledge to inform it. For me, I think that I found at the University of Pretoria is a good test here.
Yeah, and the difficulty with the community engagement, doing all of, I mean, I like how you doing it at the University of Pretoria is now. The challenge is presenting the evidence to the promotions committee.
Yes,
so what things have changed, and so is it the people saying that? Is it what is it? Because it's also self-reporting that indeed has been.
There's an element of self-reporting which is not adequate, as you rightly point out, but also others making an assessment of that and it not being a once-off thing. So if you're going to present that, it has to be fairly long-term. Processes of social change and transformation cannot be once-off. It can't be an event. I started doing engagement in the last year before my promotion, and you must promote me on it. Look what I'm doing. Look at my food gardens and all of that. I think that it must happen over some time. And also, if it's a 1 year, I'm not saying it shouldn't be taken into account. There must be some soundness to it. and
Yeah.
point us that this is going to be effective. And the community's views must also be heard, and others who are experts in working with communities. So, for example, if you are taking people who are drug addicts off the street, putting them in shelters, checking them off as a psychology professor, I've seen some people do that at UP. Psychologists who work with people who have worked with that, who are experts, must be able to say your methods are going to be effective going forward. And that, this is a promising something and is based on knowledge, or even makes them think about what they were doing and also infuse your own methods. Then I think there's value in that.
Absolutely. Tawana, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. It's been really, really insightful. And I'm seeing comments that people saying they've learned a lot. Thank you so much. Unless you have
No, thank you for having me.
Unless you have one piece of advice before you go.
No, not really, but I think that what both you and I emphasize is that promotion is a journey, not an event. People must see it as building up their scholarship and generating knowledge, and knowledge that's impactful, not just as knowledge, but in society as well. So then it becomes less combative and less about gatekeeping, less about so and so was promoted before me. Yeah,
absolutely. Tawana, thank you very much. Have a good weekend and all the best for you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you to everyone who was listening. Be safe, everyone. Yeah, bye.
Thank you. All right, that was Professor Tawana Kupe. I hope you learned as much as we hoped, we wanted you to learn. And from Professor Tawana Kupe and Professor Pinky Siekwe, thank you so much for them. Now, we've got 4 minutes before we go, and I have to give you a few last things for the week. Here's the thing. I'm sure you noted that I have started a radio station on Radio Bob, hashtag the radio station with a mind of its own, Radio Kai Kapakai. 8 o'clock every Thursday, 8 to 9. Join me. We were messed up by technology last week, but hey, I got sorted. I've got my mixer here. I've got my microphone. Actually, this week, what I want us to do this week on Radio Bob, Thursday, 8 o'clock, I'm gonna log on live on Twitter as I'm doing the program. It's education. It's an education focused program. The name of the program is Academically Speaking. You can send me your questions that you want me to respond to, and what we do on that program. I mean, here's the thing. I give you education news, right? Education news, I spice them up. I tell you my views in the process as I tell you what's happening in the world. We start here in South Africa, we go to Africa, we go out there to the US, to the UK, to other countries, so that you are clued up with education news. So I'll clue you up for education. But here's the thing, the year is ending. Children are finishing exams, results will be coming. You might not understand this or that. Come here, we'll help you. Academically Speaking, Thursday night on Radio Bob, 8 to 9. You just download the app, Radio ZA, and then look for Radio Bob. Click at 8 o'clock at night. I spend an hour with you, cluing you in on what's happening in education. And then, of course, from next week Sunday, we're going to do here on this platform, we're going to do something more interesting. We're getting into the holiday mode. So we're going to get easy, right? We're not going to introduce a new session. We're going to do a festive season session. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be interviewing people, young people with inspirational stories. So next week, look out for this story, this interview that I'm going to be doing with one of my favorite young people who failed first year and then was excluded and then came back to university to nail his degree and continue to go to Oxford. He's got a master's degree right now and doing great things. He's amazing. So I will call him in and we will talk about this situation, because the idea is that some students get excluded, academic exclusion, because they haven't performed well or whatever. I want him to tell us his story about what happened and how do we help other people make sure that they don't fall into the same trap. We're going to do that on Sunday next week at 4 o'clock. It's an amazing story. The young man is energetic, he's funny, he's amazing, he's smart, He went through the dirt and he didn't allow it to get him down. So we're talking to him next week on Sunday at 4 o'clock. But join me on Thursday. Thursday, you get education news, and then I'm going to we're talking back again this week with Tsepi Koboko, who's a BSc Eng graduate. I couldn't talk to her properly this week. I'm talking to her on Thursday night, 8 to 9 on Radio Bob, and we're going to talk about young Black women who get into engineering. What does it take? How do they succeed? How do they make it? Her story is very different, and we're going to do that. It's festive season, man, guys. Take care of yourself, make good decisions, and make sure at the end of the year, you have a good story to tell. It doesn't matter what happened. You've got to always tell a story of victory, right? Doesn't matter what challenge comes across. You've got to tell a story of victory. One day, I will tell you my story of 2020, man. It's been rough. But we ride on, right? We ride on. We don't give up. So let me say goodbye to the people on Facebook. Let me say goodbye to all of you. Keep well, guys. And then the people on Twitter, thank you so much for joining me today. Tell your friends we'll be back next week. And my faves on Instagram, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll see you again next week right here at 4 o'clock. But of course, you're welcome to join me on Thursday, 8 to 9. We'll be